Welcome to the agenda after a heartbreaking loss against the Hawks at the MCG on Sunday. With me is Jay Clark from the Herald Sun. Jay, what does this mean for the rest of the season?
What it means, Chriso, is that it's time to take stock, my friend. They've dropped to 5-9 and finals are probably unlikely. In fact, let's say they're very unlikely. To make September, Collingwood's probably got to make or win 7 of their last 8 games. And we see at this point a lot of clubs really alter their focus, really, because, I mean, Collingwood could try and flog themselves over the next 2 months with the same players to try and make finals, or do you take a bit more of a developmental focus? And I think this is the time to do that, Chris.
So play the young players, you reckon?
Well, you definitely got to look at the whole list. Now, Scharenberg, for example, let's start with him. He's too good for VFL level, got to get back in the team. Callum Brown's a 200 gamer, want to see him back in. Rupert Wills hasn't played a senior game this season, want to see him add some size in the on-ball department. Mason Cox, do you give him a look in the ruck? So Brodie's played every game until now.
So drop Grundy.
Well, he's going to need a rest at some point. When he does, let's have a look at Cox's capabilities in the ruck. And then Chris Mayne, so is he just going to stay in the VFL for the 4 years that he's here? I know he's a disciplined role player and he's not going to catch the eye a lot of the times, but then let's see what he can do in this senior team, Chris. So I'm just saying there's no point backing in the same blokes to make finals. It's probably not going to happen.
Well, it's interesting because that is in a sense direct contradiction to the agenda for Nathan Buckley, because Nathan Buckley wants to win as many games as possible. So it will be really interesting to see what happens. Let's focus on yesterday, Jay. I want to talk about the centre square, clearances generally. Now, well, we actually won the hit-outs, and the centre square, 18 to 14, overall stoppages 40 to 35. So there wasn't a great discrepancy, but it was the way Hawthorn got the ball out of the centre square. Goals out of the centre square, or scores, 5-1 to 1 straight. And it was a lack of pressure, it was poor positioning, and it was the pressure that Hawthorn were able to apply. Then on 2 of those goals were caused when we actually got first hands on the ball inside the centre square, but their pressure, the ball spelt free and they were able to convert. Poor positioning by Tom Phillips on 1 allowed Roughead to come in off the centre square to kick long. And these entries into their forward 50, they weren't just dumped pressure kicks to centre half forward. They were long penetrating kicks almost to the goal square. And there was another one where Jordan De Goey just lost his position, allowed Howe to take it out. So
is it so they're too aggressive there at the centre positioning?
On a couple of occasions, just rolled the dice when perhaps they needed to be a little bit more conservative. But it was a massive issue. Total scores from clearances, 10-3 Hawthorn, 1-2 Collingwood.
And I think, just lastly on this, opposition teams try and work off Adam Treloar. So when he bursts forward at the centre bounce, I think teams try and expose him the other way, where the Hawthorn had some success.
One of the positives out of the centre square was your man, Jordan De Goey.
Well, we called for this after the second half against Melbourne. They lost to Melbourne 3 weeks ago. He was playing largely forward up until then. We want to see him in the centre bounce. And at the weekend, he clearly played the best game of his career, Chris. So we've sort of been waiting for this, really. But, I mean, it was fantastic to see him in the centre square. He's had 35 centre square involvements up until round 14. Then round 15, 28 centre square. And he took his chance. And it's for a pick 5, I guess that's what he'd been seeing. Now, what I thought was fantastic is he played with real punch and real power around the stoppages. So, you know, he's working away. He's bursting away. I don't think he has sort of top-level speed, but I think there's a real bounce to his game. And then when he had the footy, thought he used it quite well. Down the right-hand side, there was that kick to Thomas, I think, set up his goal. Down the other end, he worked around Hartung, and then the kick to Cox to set up him. So I think he can be a really a good, strong, all-round player.
He could be a superstar.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
We've been waiting for this.
You've been saying it all year, absolutely.
Who do you liken him to?
You know what, this is a big call, but he's got a bit of the Patrick Dangerfields about him.
Wow.
Yesterday we saw him burst from stoppage. I don't think he's got the elite speed of Dangerfield, but he reminds me a little bit of that.
The power.
And he could be something pretty special.
When he fills out his frame, really commits himself. I mean, he had a troublesome start to the year, but it was great to see that, Jordan. So congrats to you. Now, selection this week. So there's a question mark on Darcy Moore hamstring and Tyson Goldsack concussion and broken nose. What would you do?
Well, Ben Reid has to come in. I've got to say, I was shocked that he was omitted for this game. Mason Cox came in. Now, the question, and we'll never know the answer about would Reid have made the difference. Cox kicked 3 goals, had 7 disposals, had a hand in 1 or 2 others. But I can't help but think that Ben Reid would have made a bigger contribution. As you know, I've been saying I'd like to see him play forward.
I reckon he would have been picked by every other team in the comp, Ben Reid.
he has to come in, obviously, this week. And I'm still on that bandwagon where I'd love to see him come forward. Depending on Darcy Moore, I'm not sure who else we put forward if Moore misses. If Moore plays, that'll be a bonus. But what it does, with Reid playing up there, it takes the pressure off Darcy Moore. It takes the best defender. Mason Cox doesn't take the best defender.
No.
And although he did his job, I think Ben Reid has to play this week. Looks like Travis Varco will be available, so that'll be a really positive in as well. But
what about Danaher?
Well, that's the other question. Whether Dunn or it may be needed for Reid if Moore is fit. Maybe Reid does have to go back just to play on Danaher. Or maybe a Henry Shade comes in who has been playing well consistently in the VFL, who played well in the start of the year. So maybe he's the option for Joe Danaher.
There are some headaches. It doesn't get any easier. Hey, your Monday moment. We always try and pick out some special things from the game. What did you like?
Well, Hawthorn kicked 5 goals out of the centre square. We kicked 1, so I thought we'd show it. Here it is. Now, beautiful ruck work and the Pendlebury to side bottom to Thomas. And under pressure, he was able to get the boot to Fasolo, who went back and absolutely nailed it. So it was a rare moment of brilliance out of the centre square, what was otherwise a day of really poor centre square work from the midfielders.
Worth saying in that last quarter, 6 minutes to go, Maynard hits the post, would have brought Collingwood back to 6 points, so that was definitely a sliding door.
What about your Monday moment?
Hey, I like Joshy Thomas. So he's been out of the senior side for a few years now, 1,000 odd days. It was great to see him back in. He's a tough competitor. There's the handball from De Goey. So he's involved again. There was that low pass that I'm talking about to our man Joshy Thomas from 45 metres out on the right foot. Never really looked like missing. And that was at a point in time of the game where Hawthorn had jumped out of the box. Chris Owen, a bit of composure there. A nice moment for Josh Thomas. He's been through a fair bit.
Absolutely.
Career was at the crossroads.
Back, it was great to see him back.
Came back in pre-season, really conditioned. I mean, Lockie Keefe is now the other one of the two that missed some time. He had a decent game in the VFL, so maybe whether we see him back in the fold, either Keefe or Keefe back, it'll be an interesting one for Nathan Buckley.
Well, massive week this week against the Bombers. Of course, Essendon coming off that shock loss to Brisbane. Saturday, MCG. It's going to be an absolute beauty. We're keeping our fingers crossed. Hope to see you next week on The Agenda.